Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and I do now have the video for the character that I've been playing in last Epoch, of course. That is the Meteor cast on crit build, which kind of turned into Frostclaw instead of Fireball, but Frostclaw is of course a fire version. Still with a cast on crit meteor, but now with like a single meteor instead of multiple meteors. This build went through a lot of changes and iterations over its 95 levels almost, because there was a lot to like solve with the proc rate, the mana, the crits, all that sort of stuff, and what skills I wanted to use. So yeah, this I think in conclusion is probably the best version of it. To begin with, I was absolutely Fireball up until like 92 or 93 levels, and it was working fine, and it still does work fine. Fireball's very fun. It starts out very nice right from level 1. You get multiple fireballs through either gear. There's a wand that lets you do some more, then spec into multiple, and you spec into some pierce as well, and then also the explosive blast that it creates when several hit a target, and it becomes a pretty nice trigger. It becomes a pretty nice clear, and I was also using multiple meteors at the same time, so every single time it would proc a meteor from the belt proc, you would get multiple meteors coming down. And that was fine, and as you can see, it does still work, but in the end, once your proc rate is high enough, once your crits are high enough, and the content is a bit tougher, you do end up just fucking starved on mana most of the time, and it is really hard to solve without just stopping every now and again and having to just charge up using focus and using the negative focus, negative mana focus passives. So in the end, I kind of re-pivoted out to single meteor, just spec'd into much heavier damage, but only one meteor instead of multiple meteor procs, and then also Frostclaw. I tried that out since I had some plus levels on a relic, and it seems to just be a better proc rate, much better overall DPS that it's got of its own as well, and I could afford a better proc rate since the meteors didn't cost as much. It still does lend to a pretty playstyle, as you can see, every now and again, but it's not anywhere near as bad. So we still do have to charge up every now and again if we proc a lot against lots of enemies, but it's much more manageable, and the gameplay and the mapping, clearing and all that was still much more fluid than before, because at this rate, like, my character crits almost 100% of the time, and the procs are gonna happen pretty profusely. So you have to then accommodate for that with a lot of mana, with some mana regen, and also just charging up through focus every now and again. So I think the multiple meteors, which was what I wanted to do originally, is still doable if you are okay with that playstyle, but by level 93 or something, getting into deeper corruption and stuff, I was thinking, if I'm going to keep playing this, I want to do something more about the mana, and the multiple meteors had to kind of go. The Frostclaw is just a bit better on damage and proc rate, but you could definitely still keep playing Fireball if you like Fireball instead. It does have more of a fiery feel to the whole character if you keep playing Fireball, and I enjoyed it for what it was up till this point, so by all means try out the Fireball method, and you might be able to also make it do better with the wand that gives an extra couple proj, because overall it's still pretty good. It has good damage, and it has a decent proc rate, and it also feels very fiery, and then you can get it down to almost 0 mana cost, so that means you could pretty much spam away whenever you want to. And then the nicest part of it is the homing that it has too, so it's pretty fun to have a homing projectile. But currently gone to Frostclaw, as you can see, which is kind of a fiery Frostclaw. It does have huge amounts of proc rate potential. Like on a couple of these bosses that I was doing, I'd get up to 300 to 500 armor shred stacks, and that's just with armor shred, a bit on my gloves and then on my amulet, and you can get really high just stacks, which proves that you're hitting very hard, frequently against some of these bosses. This is a tier 4 Sanctum. First time I've actually killed this boss was on this character just now, this actual footage, because yeah, usually I'm like getting one shot by something, whereas this one by this stage did have enough like of a life pool and some ward to be able to take the one shots that I was getting otherwise one shot by, and then it still had pretty good DPS as well. So, well, for my standards anyway. I don't know if there's like much bigger from Falconers, Warlocks, etc. But yeah, this for me has felt like the best character I've taken to higher tiers so far out of the ones I've played. And then you can also see you can do some meme shit like this if you spec into the Frostclaw Elemental Nova triggers, and then spec some of the area and stuff, and then just trigger Elemental Novas all over the screen, and they can get pretty big, and it starts to look kind of like a PoE discharge style build. So yeah, if you want to do that, you can. I'll just show you what the process for that is real quick while showing you the other stuff. But I will say, I'm pretty sure Elemental Nova just sucks ass. Like, specking into all this, it looks kind of cute and it does a whole bunch of stuff, but damage-wise, it's just not good. It was more of a meme, and yeah, just having a big Meteor proc instead seemed to be a bit more effective, because I tried it out, Elemental Nova, and it crits for like 2k or something, even with everything I've spec'd into it and tried to use the gear for it and all that. But it looks kind of cool, it helps kind of with clear. If you're really into it, by all means, you can still get into it. Or maybe I just didn't give it enough attention to give it all the damage it needs. I don't know. Either way, let me go ahead and show you how I built this character so you can follow those steps if you really want it. So here's my character. Yeah, about to hit level 95. Reign of Winter Farmer. I'm trying to farm hair up for these bows to maybe do an Icicle build at some point. But yeah, that's just the character. Anyway, it is a sorcerer, so I was told that Rune Master's fucking crazy and Sorcerer kind of sucks, and you know, I wanted to still play a Sorcerer and do some Meteor action, because Meteor seemed kind of cool in this game, which it is, you know, it feels pretty cool. It's got a big Meteor action, and then, like I said, you can do multiples, you can do spec into lots of them and do it that way. But we did go Frostclaw, and we did trigger through this belt, so it's because I found this belt that I wanted to do this Meteor action. It has a 9% chance to cast Meteor on crit if above 0 mana. So nothing crazy, but that's all it takes when you proc a lot and get your, you know, crit and mana up, and then things do end up happening. So I then also only had 1 LP, managed to smash cooldown recovery on it, and that took the build from there. So that's basically the basis of the build. Just have this type of belt, and then do the auto procking through either Frostclaw or Fireball. If it's Fireball, you are specking into this sort of stuff early on. You are going down here for this Flame Burst, because that helps with some clear, some explosions, some procs, and you're getting some Pierce, which hopefully isn't from this. It's from the helmet mod that you can get, which has Pierce on it. And then, yeah, you're trying to get plus fireballs on your chest, on your over here, like a +1 is good too. More levels does help, but yeah, this is like my chest from when I was doing Fireball Meteor, and this is still my chest. I don't have anything better at the moment. And then, yeah, same with the hat. This is my hat for the Fireball setup as well. So my setup is actually still basically Fireball based, but it doesn't really matter. The Frostclaw, there's nothing I could do particularly extra on chest or hat that would really make Frostclaw any better here. But yeah, this thing gets pretty crazy just because of what you can spec into it. So if you spec all of this, it ends up like shooting an extra wave, and then another extra wave, and then a wave that returns. And then if you get this, you can hit or, with all your targets onto one enemy. So it does end up getting pretty crazy. You do have to solve the mana a little bit. But then on top of that, it also ends up giving you like extra ward, and feels pretty good. It's a good proc system. It's got lots of crit. It's got lots of procs. It removes ailments on cleansed on cast as well, which is pretty fancy. Yeah, there's a lot of good utility. You can kind of chop and change what you want to spec specifically into, but this is what I've got at the moment. And the main reason I wanted to try Frostclaw is because I got this relic that powered up to +4 Frostclaw, Otherwise, I was trying to get a relic that was going to power up for like Flame Ward, I think, yeah, which would have done more utility there. Anyway, the gear is pretty much just, some cast speed, some fire pen, some plus spell on the wand. Nothing too special there. There is a wand that I actually used for most of the character's existence. I probably should have had that one up for show. Because it's really nice for leveling, and well, there's a couple of really nice ones for leveling, and then you end up this thing here is insane for leveling. Spreading Flames on hit, highly recommend it. If you can get cast speed on it thanks to the LP, then it just becomes even more fun to level. And then eventually you'd replace it, which might take a while, for Cinder Songs. And then if you got a 2 or a 3 LP one with really good stats, it can take you pretty much all the way, as long as you want. I only really replaced mine at like level 85 maybe for this, but I think it's a little bit better to have lots of cast speed, lots of spell damage from the implicit of the wand, because that does affect Meteor heavily. Meteor loves plus damage, because it's got a high effectiveness. So then we have, just some high implicit for ward and stuff with some spell damage, crit. Ideally, this thing gets replaced because it's not super good at the moment. Rings, opal rings for cooldown recovery, just int and res and stuff, and trying to get mana regen pretty much everywhere we can. So some mana, some int. Int is absolutely king for this style of build. Gloves probably still need replacing, and amulet definitely still needs replacing, but need to get armor shreds somewhere. But yes, int is king for this type of build because we do scale off of int, and we do get like crit off of int and ward retention and stuff. So in the end, this is my passive tree, just doing a bit here, a lot in the sorcerer area, doing some ward and some scaling for mana and cast speed and all kinds of shit. And then Rune Master has some really good stuff for self-cast. Gives you some ward, gives you some ward per second and some int and crit multi while wearing a wand. And then you get Flame Rush when you become a Rune Master eventually, and it's a pretty good feeling skill, at least I think so. It replaces Teleport, and then you kind of like choose how far you go just by holding down, so it's something to get used to because, that's how you play Teleport normally, just press it once, but instead you got to hold and release whenever you choose to a certain limit. That's as far as you can go, right? But it's a pretty fun skill and does make the build quite nice, I think. Aside from that, yep, the Frostclaw passive tree is that. This is the focus passive tree, so this is what you start to use when you're really getting to a deficit of mana. You can choose to not do this negative mana thing, because this just gives you a burst of mana only when you're at negative mana. So once you go into a deficit because you've overprocced, you press this and it gives you a huge burst of mana. But it adds a bigger cooldown, so you can't like press it all the time. Whereas without this, I was just like doing focus whenever I had a spare second, which does, maybe be a bit of a tedious playstyle for some people. And it wasn't too bad, but it started to feel really bad when I had to overproc with lots of meteors, and then I was kind of at a mana deficit pretty often. So spec into this means you don't have to press it too often, hopefully, because once you go negative, you get a big burst of mana, and then you probably don't need mana for another little bit. So that's why you spec over here. Otherwise, you can do some, extra ward, which is what I was spec'd into over there. The Meteor passive tree has a couple of branches. You can go down the shrapnel route, which like shoots out extra proj. It didn't feel like it was doing that much. I did test it out, so I don't know, I kind of got rid of it. For the most part, all my clear was coming from this comfortably anyway. But yeah, you can try that out. Maybe you have better success. This is the route for lots of meteors. It gives +1 by default, but like almost does more than double your mana cost, and then you can spec into more meteors, and it, you're not always going to be overlapping all those meteors anyway, so it does seem like a bit of a bait, given that we don't have infinite mana and we can't fully solve mana. If we could, then yeah, this is probably pure profit, but it does take a lot of points, and they are points that could be instead diverted to damage, because there's a lot of damage on this tree for Meteor. You get all the fire pen, you get like all the more damage there, you get all the more damage there, there's bigger area and crit, and then the crit multi, and there's even more area over there if you want. And if you're converting your Meteor to lightning or some shit, which is certainly an option through the set, then you can have more damage there too. So by getting this, you do kind of have to forego some other damage on the spec. So it's not just pure profit. And then, like I said, can't really sustain that mana. Flame Ward's largely there for utility and buffs and stuff. So it gives some fire damage, gives some extra damage, and then haste, and then a bunch of mana regen over here, as well as just some defensiveness. You can spec more into defensiveness for it if you want, but yep, that's what I'm doing. And then Flame Surge doesn't really need too heavy of a spec. You could even potentially not spec it at all, but it is convenient for a bit of extra cooldown recovery. It gives you some extra ward, less damage taken while using it. We get Frenzy as well, which is pretty nice. So that's just 20% cast speed for a couple of seconds. But yeah, if you really wanted, you could probably spec something else in that slot instead. But I don't think there's anything I'd really super want to, unless I wanted to stand still for Arcane Ascendance more, which might be an option. You know, you can spec more into this, and then you have a really big burst window just when you press Arcane Ascendance, because it gives your regen goes away pretty much, and you drain, well, it doesn't go away, but you drain mana while doing this, and then you can't move, but it can be a lot of extra cast damage and speed and all that. And it might still be an option. I'll look into it, but yeah, that's currently the spec, that's currently the setup. The relics, you can get Frostclaw efficiency to make it cheaper. I've only got one of these, otherwise just fire damage, and then just mana, armor, bit of ward and stuff, and fire damage, and fucking whatever. Nothing too special. I don't think my res are even capped, not at the moment. They can be a bit more balanced, but not really too much of an issue when we have a lot of ward and, you know, kill stuff quick. I don't know. But yeah, that's about it. There are some good options for the setup, like this chest, especially if you can get some LP on it, will be insane. I haven't got a really good chest here, but this is the only one I've had that can do anything. If you're going to go the Elemental Nova route, you need this thing as well. And yeah, the Elemental Nova spec is to just kind of go up here, put in points into this thing for Elemental Nova, and then just take a whole bunch of shit. So you can take the reason I had so much area in the clip is because of this. If you take this, it doesn't actually add a cooldown to the proc of Nova, so you can still proc all over the place with this extra area. Otherwise, you can still spec into some other area over here, and damage, and then damage, and area damage. But it still didn't seem like it did that much damage, so I don't know, maybe I didn't spec it correctly, but that's the main takeaway, that there is a point there that gives you a bunch of area that doesn't actually add a cooldown if you're proccing. Yep, all that said and done, very fun character. I think I might actually take it to level 100 because I still want to upgrade some of the gear, and it's still pretty fun to play. But I might still do one more character just to make this bow happen, or something else, I don't know, before we jump back onto PoE for the last bit of the league, probably. I don't know. I'm still having fun, and still discovering skills and builds, and it's still pretty good. So thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.